Welcome to the 5th annual Fright Flight.
Fair, though it's not the interstitial one anymore, at least.
No, we've upgraded it.
We have.
Fright Flight now falls on a holiday.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's actually an upgrade.
No, I don't know either.
On the flip side, your spooky content now comes out on Halloween.
True.
So now you have specific spooky content for Halloween.
The thing you've never had before. No one's ever made specifically spooky content for the day of Halloween.
Specifically, studios in the past have attempted to avoid releasing new media on holidays.
Yeah.
Like, you'll never see movies come out on, like, Halloween or Christmas.
No, never.
Like, never. Doesn't happen.
Why would they? They're bank holidays. No one's going to go to the theater on a bank holiday.
Bank holidays don't exist in America.
I mean, they're still called bank holidays.
No, they're called federal holidays.
And banks follow them.
I might be wrong. We might have bank holidays in America.
I think we do. I might be wrong, but I'm fairly certain we do. I think most federal holidays are just also bank holidays.
I just know the term bank holiday is very much a British term.
Is it? I was unaware.
Yeah, they have bank holiday. We don't typically get those, but,
No.
but also we're America, so where most countries are getting like
Minimum 2 weeks off a year.
we're not. Anyways,
Yeah.
let's stop talking about the real horror and get into the created fictional horror.
That's right. As you already know, because of course we couldn't not share it with you, because
The entire month has been
the Twilight Zone. We're going to watch we did watch, and now we're going to talk about Twilight Zone, the movie. Actually, I think it's the Twilight Zone movie, right?
It's Twilight Zone the movie.
Oh,
Twilight
okay.
Zone, the movie.
See, I thought I might have it wrong, because the show is the Twilight Zone.
So, I was under the impression that this movie was like an hour and a half,
Mm-hmm.
all adapted from the episode Nightmare at 20,000 Feet.
No.
No. Instead, it's an hour and 41 minutes.
Mm-hmm. It's just a collection of 4 vignettes led by Steven Spielberg, who produced it and I think was the overarching director. So you probably had call on some of the edits for the other directors. I don't know how a piecemeal / composed film or project of that works, where you have a director who's assumably in charge of everything, but you have other directors filming portions of it. I don't exactly how that works, but
I have no idea.
yeah. So there's 4 vignettes.
There's the 5th one, which is the prologue. It ties back around to the very end of the 4th one.
Yeah, I guess.
So closer to 5.
Sure, though calling them vignettes feels kind of weak. There's not much going there.
No, I mean they're
They're the framing devices we get for the Twilight Zone. They're just not amazing Rod Serling framing devices.
More importantly, I just did the numbers crunchies in my head.
Yep.
And an hour and 40 minutes divided across 4 segments along with a short prologue and not an actual epilogue because that's part of the 4th segment.
Yep.
Means each of these were given about 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Which means this movie is actually just 4 TV episodes of The Twilight Zone with a bigger budget and better directors, quotation marks.
Though it doesn't exactly split onto 25, 25, 25 because the first one is definitely shorter than the other 3.
Oh, I wasn't counting the prologue.
No, John Landis's work is definitely shorter than the other 3.
Is it?
It definitely feels like, at the very least,
It is better paced. It's not good.
I wouldn't even necessarily say it's better paced. I would just say there's a lot of stuff going on and no story to be told.
Let's get into the movie then. The prologue is very simple. 2 guys driving on a highway
Yep.
late at night, listening to
Creedence Clearwater.
Midnight Special by Creedence Clearwater.
Yep. And then the tape gets stuck in the tape deck, and the driver's like, this is brand new, what the fuck?
He's like, well, I guess we have to entertain each other then.
Well, the other guy says, we could talk to each other, because the guy's complaining about how he doesn't have a tape to listen to, the radio's out, there's just no entertainment nowadays. What are they supposed to do? And the guy's like, we could talk. And the guy's like, we already did that.
So they end up playing the theme song game, which is when I hum a theme song, you attempt to guess it, and then you hum a theme song and I attempt to guess it. And whoever can stump the other person 3 times first wins.
Yeah. So they go back and forth with a bunch of shows you don't know because you are not an adult in the 80s.
Yeah. You didn't grow up watching 50s, 60s, and 70s television.
Yeah, you might recognize 1 or 2 if you're lucky, but you will, if you're watching this movie, probably recognize the last one, which is The Twilight Zone.
I mean, I also recognize Hawaii Five-O's.
Yeah, I said you might recognize 1 or 2.
But yeah, you would recognize the Twilight Zone one, and
when that one comes up, they both just start gushing about how great the Twilight Zone was and talk about episodes they really enjoyed. And they mention some really good episodes. Then they mention an Outer Limits episode, and the other guy's like, that's not Twilight Zone, it's Outer Limits. And the guy's like, no, I'm pretty sure it's the Twilight Zone.
And then the driver goes, you wanna know what's really scary though? And he turns off the headlights.
Yeah, he's like, imagine we're not almost out of gas. And we're just driving down this road or something, and then he turns off the lights.
And he does this a couple times, and the passenger's like, dude, could you please stop? Like, not cool. And eventually he's like, okay, whatever. And the passenger goes, now, do you want to see something that's actually really scary?
And they're like, yeah, sure. And the guy's like, okay, pull over. It's like, wait, what? Yeah, pull over. Okay. And then he pulls over to the shoulder of the road, but not the shoulder of the side of the road he's driving on, which isn't a dangerous spot to pull over. They're on a fairly flat road for the most part, and both have a good chunk of shoulder. He pulls through the other lane to that shoulder, which is weird as fuck in my opinion. Honestly, it might just be because they already had the camera set up at one spot, and they're like, we can't switch to the other side of the road to get this. Just pull over that side. It's fine.
Well, maybe, like, they were afraid if they changed how the shot was set up, they might accidentally crash another helicopter and kill 3 more people.
Yeah, we'll get to that. That's the first one. We will get to that. It's probably, like, the one thing people actually know about the film if they know anything about the film.
The one thing I knew about the film was that it was an hour and 30-minute adaptation of Nightmare at 20,000 Feet.
So you knew nothing about the film.
I knew Spielberg was involved, and Landis.
Did you really know Spielberg was involved because I mentioned it last time when we were talking about the movie?
No, I was vaguely aware of Spielberg's involvement with the Twilight Zone movie before that.
Okay.
Like, it's one of the things my brain knows Spielberg for.
Weird.
That and Jurassic Park.
He didn't do Jurassic Park.
Yes, he did. He also did E.T.
Yeah. I just wanted to see if you would cave to that one.
No, he definitely did Jurassic Park. I know this.
Okay. Actually, I'm pretty sure it was Michael Crichton.
He wrote the book, yes. Right?
Yes, Michael Crichton wrote the Jurassic Park books. I love how you were more unsure of that than Spielberg.
Yeah, the movies are famous.
You know what? Fair point. I don't know why I thought Michael Crichton was more well-known than he is.
So the first segment is a readaptation of a Twilight Zone episode called Time Out.
I mean, we didn't finish the intro.
Oh.
He pulls over, and
the
guy turns around and is like, what are you doing? And then he turns around and his face is all bluish and monstery, and his hair is lank and white, and then he, like, hiss, roars, and lunges at the guy, and then we cut to the first episode.
When you say hiss, roars, you mean they inserted the sound of a wildcat?
Yeah, kind of.
Like the, classic wildcat noise?
Yeah, they got into, like, this really long 2-minute music video about getting your head in the game. Those wildcats are out there, man.
And then he killed the driver.
Yeah, because he couldn't get his head in the game.
So then we cut to the first segment, the first of 4 episodes that make up this movie.
Yes, and this one is directed by John Landis.
And the segment is entitled Time Out, but it is based off a previous Twilight Zone episode called Back There.
Is it?
Yeah.
I was under the impression this was like the one original.
No.
I assume it's more original than the other one, though, because this is definitely much more not Twilight Zone than the other ones. This feels like John Landis took a bunch more creative freedom with it, and he probably shouldn't have.
No, it's pretty much the same episode.
Oh, okay.
Just give me 1 second while In fact, I would actually go as far as to say the previous version of this episode may have been better because they actually redressed the time-traveling character in time-appropriate clothes every time he transitioned time periods.
Yeah, also, like I said, this one wasn't very good. John Landis shouldn't have done it.
Also, although, specifically in that one, it was Civil War stuff. So it's not exactly a 1-for-1, but like it's the same concept.
Okay, so it's the same concept, but like I wouldn't necessarily say it's back there then, because I mean, one, probably nowhere near as good. We don't want to ruin the connotation of the episode back there. 2, I assume back there has more story than just a guy is a bigot and an asshole and actively yells things horribly racist and anti-Semitic and just all around shitty in a bar, and then steps out and just gets tossed through moments in time where he's forced to experience the experience of those people don't. All while there's no actual story there other than just the fact that he is being persecuted.
But yeah, but that's because back there centers less around bigotry and being a piece of shit and more around the concept of what if you could time travel and change the past and how would that affect the present day?
I would argue it's a much different thing then, and I wouldn't say this one was based off that then.
Except Landis and Spielberg and the people involved in the Twilight Zone movie specifically say that this is based off that episode.
No. Artist dead. I'm going to ignore them.
No, they didn't adapt that episode into this. That's not what happened. Literally what happened. Landis didn't start from a fresh idea. He took an episode from Twilight Zone.
No, he was inspired by the Twilight Zone, and they made a really bad short film.
So, in this segment, we have our main character, Bill Connor.
Yes.
And him and his friends are at a bar, and Bill is complaining because he just got passed over for a promotion at work.
Yes. Though the segment does start with a Twilight Zone narrated intro, though it's not Rod Serling.
No, it doesn't. None of them do.
None of them start with an intro?
Nope.
No?
Nope.
Now you're the one revising things.
Rod Serling's not involved in this movie.
He's not, and they do an intro, and that makes it bad. It's not bad. It's not a bad narration. It's just nowhere near as good as the OG Twilight Zone intros. And we're like, Bill Connor's a...
It's not even as good as Jordan Peele.
Yeah. They're like, Bill Connor's a horribly mean person, crotchety old man, but little does he know, things about to get worse purely because of his own attitude.
You know, it is really hilarious to me how they frame him as just a mean, crotchety person.
Yeah.
And, like, I understand that the episode itself is, like, entirely, like, a judgment on racist people and bigots. But, like, they kind of, like, are treating him with kid gloves, even.
Yeah, kind of. And then, so, him and his friends are at this bar, though, and he's complaining about being passed up for a promotion that went to another member of whatever company he works for, who happens to be Jewish.
And happens to have been there longer.
Mm-hmm. Though don't mention that. That doesn't matter. He's worked harder than him.
When we say he complains about him, there's several slurs.
Mm-hmm. And just the horrible way extremely bigoted and racist people say the word Jew. Like, very, very harsh.
Stupid Jawa.
I appreciate the easy and sorry bit.
It's not even like a little bit. Like, we can't actually talk about what...
Oh, yeah, we're not gonna, like, straight up repeat any of the shit he says about any of the people.
He apparently believes that Jewish people control the world.
They own everything. He doesn't know why this guy needs a promotion. Jewish people are super rich. They already own everything. She's like, one of her friends is like, hey, I know... I don't remember the guy's name. I'll call him Fred. Hey, I know Fred. Fred's definitely not rich. Mm-hmm. He's like... No, you don't get it. That's not what I'm saying. It's Jewish people are in control of everything.
Well, not everything, because he goes on another tirade against Asians here, where he uses a bunch of different slurs.
He uses one specific slur for one specific group when not talking about that specific group, which is also in of itself inherently racist to push them all into the same grouping.
But Jewish people don't control everything because the bank that owns his house
is a Japanese-owned bank.
Yeah. Oh, and then you can't forget that in addition to not getting the promotion and the fact that his house is owned by Asians.
Not 6 blocks away. Not 6 blocks away. There are black people living near him. The atrocity.
Except he doesn't say black people.
Yeah.
It's a hard R, people.
Yeah. So basically he goes on this rant that, hey, even 40 years later, you've heard this exact rant before from some random person you've met.
Maybe on TV.
Yeah.
Maybe from a presidential candidate.
Because guess what? None of the talking points have changed. Oh, things have gotten so much worse. Oh, they're taking our jobs. Oh, I worked so much harder than them. Yeah. So as Bill's having this entire tirade and throwing a fit, a table next, everybody in the bar is pissed off. Also, let's not forget, he's not just racist. He's also misogynistic and a piece of shit, because when the waitress comes up, he starts immediately hitting on her and goes to smack her ass. And then she leaves and is like, hey, don't fucking touch me. Goes to get their order. But while he's throwing this rant, the table next to him is like, one of the people stand up, and it's a table of black men. And guys just like, hey, you need to calm down or we're going to have a problem. Like, you can think whatever you want. I don't want to have to fucking hear it. And someone's like, hey, he's just had a bad day. He's like, that sucks for him. Get him under control.
Hey, he's just had a bad day. Normally he isn't this misogynistic or racist. And normally he doesn't use slurs like this, I promise. He would never say that.
He would never say these things. He just almost got a promotion. That he definitely wasn't ever going to get. There was a promotion at work, and he was like, oh, I deserve that, despite not. So Bill's friends started talking about him, and he just blows him. He's like, no, you guys don't get it. Repeats basically fucking everything. And then they're like, dude, he stands up, walks up the bar, shoulder checks the waitress, and when he steps outside, he is now in Nazi-controlled France.
Where he's almost instantly accosted by a pair of SS officers who believe him to be a Jew.
Yeah, they're asking for his papers and stuff, but it's all in French. So if you don't know French, there's not a lot of storytelling going on in this segment. And they're going through his wallet and stuff, asking who he is. And basically the entire time he's just shouting, I'm an American. You can't do this. I'm an American. I'm an American. I'm white. I'm an American. You can't do this. And then they go to put him in a car. He breaks away from them. As he's running away, he gets shot in the arm. And he continues to run away.
And he initially successfully hides from them for a minute. And then sneaks into a building and into a French woman's apartment. And she and her kids are in there.
And they're immediately terrified of the strange sweaty man who's bleeding.
And he's asking for help. And so she goes to the window and goes, hey, Nazis.
Yeah, she's yelling,
attention, man is in here.
Attention, there's a strange man in here. Yeah, and he's like, he gets annoyed and upset with her, and so he goes to leave out the front door, but when he steps out into the lobby area, surprisingly, there's Nazis in the building. So then he heads back inside, barricades the door, and climbs out the window to then just stand at the front of the building where anyone can see him from the street.
Yeah, so this is like a second or third story apartment, and he's on the ledge outside the window.
Yep.
And the German soldiers on the ground see him and just start taking pot shots at him until he falls off.
No, the German soldiers see him, start to take pot shots at him after a few of them try to get him from the window, and one falls out comedically, because it's the one highlight in this entire thing. Watching a Nazi fall from a window is also amusing. And then the SS officers show up, stop the normal soldiers from firing, and then just banter back and forth while each trading a pot shot.
It is wild when you set up a scenario where the Nazis might be the good guys.
Yeah, like, I'm not like, oh no, this is horrible. I'm like, cool, the Nazis should shoot this guy.
They're still going to lose the war, but maybe in between now and losing the war, they can make Bill Connor a dead man.
Yeah.
Like...
it wouldn't be the first time Nazis shot people who agreed with their ideals.
And it won't be the last time.
Exactly.
Because Nazis still exist.
Unfortunately. But so he gets...
You remember when I said we should stick to fictional horror?
Yeah, I do. So as they're shooting, they don't hit him at any point. It honestly feels like they're just fucking with him and shooting around him because they're all really close.
Yeah, they are 100% missing on purpose.
So he loses his balance and falls out of fear. And you see him fall, screen goes black, and then camera comes back as he's flipped over onto his back, and there's an angry southern white man yelling at him and talking about how they're going to burn this African-American man. Obviously, they don't say that, because it's an angry white southern man in the 50s.
No, I'm just laughing because you're like, because they're going to burn this, and then, like, you don't just, like, you're not just inserting African-American man, you're like,
I need them to know what comes there. Like, I left the pause like, yeah, we know what, they know what should be said. Then I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not a horrible person like Bill.
Except they don't actually plan to burn Bill. They
instead are setting him up to be lynched.
Yeah.
Also, for some reason, they're all dressed like ghosts. Except for the main guy.
Well, that's because it's Halloween, Justice.
Oh shit, you're right. It is Halloween.
They're dressed like ghosts because it's Halloween. They're going trick-or-treating right after they kill this black man.
But Bill's just like, I'm not black, I'm white, struggling. No one's paying attention to him. He manages to knock himself free of them. In the process doing so, knocking one of the clan members back into a burning cross, so he's set on fire. Again, the only good parts of this vignette from Landis are horribly racist people getting hurt, which is still true for Bill's character as well. But he runs off. They're chasing him. He jumps into a lake. They follow.
I think pond is probably
It's hard to tell. We don't get to see the extent of the body of water.
Yeah, it's just got a small little dock, and he jumps in.
And then they start firing shotguns into it.
And he initially avoids their barrage of fire.
But then a truck of more racists show up, because there are always more trucks of racists. It's actually the way you measure them, like the quantity, a truckload of racists.
41 years later, that sentence is still true.
Yeah.
Interesting how that doesn't change.
So then we cut from there to him rising up out of the water in a jungle. Where could he possibly be?
And as he rises up out of the water, a bunch of Vietnamese soldiers, Viet Cong.
Yeah, it should be the Viet Cong given the setup of this interaction here. By interaction, I mean no one interacts, but the U.S. military we see in a bit are actively fearful and avoiding / attacking Viet Cong soldiers.
And so he hides from them.
And there's a big snake. Ooh, scary.
Because he hasn't learned yet that he's not white in any of these.
Mm-hmm. He hears some...
Except maybe in Germany. He might be white in Germany.
Maybe. He hears some... I mean, unless you ask him, in which case Jewish people aren't white, probably, according to Bill.
Fair enough. Also, the snake, gets in his face and hisses at him and,
It's meant to be scary, but we see too much of the snake, and my brain immediately goes, oh, that snake ate super recently.
Also, my brain was like, oh, that snake not gonna bite you. That's not a bitey snake. That's a crushy snake.
Yeah, and it ate recently. It's not gonna do shit to you, man.
That's not a snake that's, gonna just bite you and inject you with venom. That's a snake that's gonna crush you. You got time.
Yeah, literally, as the snake swim by, it looks like it just recently consumed a pig. That is how full we talking.
I mean, it's not quite that bulgy, but yeah, I get you.
But he hears some people speaking English, so he runs towards them like, I'm an American, I'm white, hey, I'm white, don't shoot, I'm white. Literally, I think those are some verbatim words, I'm white, don't shoot, I'm white.
I think he says, I'm an American, don't shoot, I'm an American, but yeah, pretty much. For Bill, those are the same words.
Yeah. And the squad of U.S. military. It seems to be a squad of black men.
It's a mixed group.
I honestly couldn't tell because the lighting was very bad, but like first 3 people in the row aren't, which I think part of the reason it's shot this way is to like more remark on like the racist qualities of Bill, because like, hey, look, these people also fought for the country when you were complaining about how you fought for white supremacy, basically, as your understanding of what an American is when you were in Vietnam.
But anyways, the group of soldiers, all of them open fire with their machine guns.
Because they're extremely paranoid, and just before this, they were talking about how they definitely shouldn't have shot their lieutenant. But literally, a line's like, we shouldn't have shot whatever. And they're like, shut up.
And somehow, Bill doesn't get shot at all.
Despite the fact that they're all bunched in a circle and just firing in any fucking direction.
Because they hear splashing noises still, one of them takes a grenade and throws it, and that's what gets Bill. And Bill is launched from the water right into 1940s Germany again.
Where he is grabbed and thrown in a train after being slapped with the Star of David. To which, when he sees the Star of David, he looks down, seems really confused. Seems like he might finally understand what's going on, gets thrown in a train.
A train that is not quite full enough to be a representative of...
Oh, God, no. This would have to be, like, the first fucking stop of this train. And even then, I have to assume we're in late-era Nazi-controlled France for it to be this empty still. Because there's, like, 5 other people in there.
And
they're all looking at him with pity and remorse because, like, hey, this fucking sucks. We know what the situation is. I'm so sorry you got caught. And he's just like, wait, what? And he backs up, yelling the entire time.
And he turns around and looks out the bars of the train, and he sees the bar that he walked out of, and his friends are walking out of the bar, and he's screaming for them, but they can't see him. They can't hear him, and the train pulls away.
Yeah, I don't even think we get an outro for this. I think that's just the end of it.
That's just the end of it.
Yeah, not good setup as a Twilight Zone episode. There's like no story, no like slow build, no even like slightly hidden message. It's just, hey, being racist is bad, which fair. You're not wrong, John Landis.
But
you know what else is bad? Illegally hiring 2 young Asian children to be in your film and then not practicing good safety regulations. And because of that, them and Vic Morrow, the man playing Bill, dying in a helicopter crash. In such a nasty helicopter crash because a mortar was fired before it was supposed to, that it blew off the tail of the helicopter. And then the helicopter ended up not just murdering, but like beheading your main actor and one of the children. Yeah, if you know anything about the Twilight Zone movie, it's probably about this segment in particular and John Landis' just horrible handling of the film set.
Also, I believe this is why the movie didn't come out in 1979.
Yes, I do believe this is what pushed it.
I'm pretty sure it was supposed to be released as a 20th anniversary for the Twilight Zone.
Yes, it was supposed to be, if I remember correctly.
And it got pushed back to 1983 because of years of legal battles,
Yeah. In which case, no one was found guilty of anything. But hey, the industry safety standards were changed.
Hey, Justice, remember when I was like, we should focus on fictitious horror?
No.
We should circle back to fictitious horror.
Yep.
That said, after segment 1, would you watch more of the Twilight Zone movie? It's divided into episodes. I figured we could take the formula.
You know what? Fair. No, I wouldn't.
Me neither. I was so disappointed that this wasn't a single, like, 2-hour, hour-and-a-half long adaptation of a single Twilight Zone episode. Because I feel like you could do so much.
Especially with some of the episodes.
You could do so much to flesh out a story of Twilight Zone.
And, like, this... I guess this is pretty brazen for me to say, because I'm directly going against one of the directorial greats. From what I understand, from what I've heard, Spielberg assembled these episodes, putting him and Landis in the front, because he thinks the other 2 segments were much better. The last 2 we'll get to. Which, fair. I would agree with his idea. I do think this movie goes from worst to best in the segments. Why would you fucking arrange your movie that way? Why do you not start with a good one, put the shitty ones in the middle, and end on the great one?
Look.
Why would you start with something this not good?
If there's one thing I've learned from WWE 2K GM mode, it's that you want to start with a good match and end with a good match. Everything in the middle of the card doesn't matter.
Like, I don't know if Spielberg knew this, but people can just get up and leave the theater. It's a thing they are allowed to do.
Well, no, you see, they bought a ticket, so because they spent money, they're not going to just leave midway through or they wasted their money.
It's not even midway, though. They could just sneak into another movie. They'll have missed, like, maybe 20 minutes.
I mean...
And that's if they had, like, the gumption to stick through this first episode, which is asking a lot.
So segment 2, not episode 2, segment 2, there's segments, not episodes.
Yes.
Is entitled Kick the Can, and it's a remake of the episode Kick the Can.
Yeah, from 1962. And this one's Spielberg's episode. And it's fine.
So the episode opens with an old man named Mr. Bloom moving into Sunnyvale retirement home.
Yes. Well, it actually starts with our intro, where we're introduced to Leo Conroy through the narration, who is just an unhappy old man. Not racist this time, just kind of unhappy.
Mm-hmm. And so then we cut to Mr. Bloom moving in.
Played by Scatman Crothers.
And he stirs up this retirement home. He like gets them all reminiscing and talking about the youth and being children and like...
Because they were all kind of talking, having an all right time. 2 of them were watching The Price is Right.
I think
no,
so.
Maybe. It's Jeopardy. It was Jeopardy.
Jeopardy, yeah.
And one of them's really fucking good at it. The other one is slightly upset. The other guy's just constantly answering whatever. But as we're doing that, we hear some kids playing outside. Then Leo, Connor, the old cranky man, is like, man, those kids aren't supposed to be here. And then the older ladies in the group start talking about how when they were kids. And then Mr. Bloom kind of just was like, yeah, no, like being a kid was great. Playing is fantastic. Like you should never just stop playing.
Yeah, he's like, being old doesn't mean you can't enjoy life. Like, if you want to dance, we should dance. And this one lady tries to get up, but she can't because her back hurts, so they can't actually dance. And they're all talking and reminiscing, and he's like, you know what we need? We need a good old game of kick the can.
Yeah.
And this is after they've talked about like what games and stuff they used to play as children, what they enjoyed. And Leo Conroy like objects at this. He's like, these people are old. They can't be getting out there. Like, what if they fall? When was the last time you were able to stand up after falling on your own? And Bloom is like, yeah, but I'm not asking them to do anything I wouldn't do. And additionally, like, we can still play and have fun. There's nothing preventing us from doing that.
To which Mr. Connor is like, yeah, there is. They're old. Their bones will break. You can't ask them to run. They'll hurt themselves. There's a bunch of reasons why we can't play and have fun. It's because we're old. That's the bunch of reasons. It's just old.
On top of that, even if we weren't old, there's the caretaker lady whose job is to literally prevent us from having fun.
Yeah, to which Mr. Bloom's like, that's fine. We can just do it tonight.
While she's asleep.
Yeah, I'll wake everyone up.
And Conroy's like, well, not me. I'm going to sleep.
Yeah. So night comes around. Mr. Conroy goes, wakes everyone up, and they all head outside.
Mr. Bloom.
Mr. Bloom. Conroy stays sleeping in his bed. You're right. Yep. And he goes to wake them up. They all go outside. He sets out a very nice shiny metal can, which he has had with him since he sat down in the nursing home. Well, the retirement home, because he pulled it out to polish it on his way up the stairs out of the first scene. He sets it down, and all the other ones run and hide. And then at this point, I realized I have no idea what the fuck kick the can is. I thought you literally just like kicked the can, chose a goal. I always thought it was the like shopping street mini game in Mega Man Legends, where I'm just like, no, I gotta kick the can behind the butcher's counter, and he'll be annoyed, but I'll get points and money.
And I'll get 1,000 zenny, which is like $10.
Yeah.
I get $10 for inconveniencing you. I'm going to continue to inconvenience you.
Forever.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, that is not the case. Apparently, kick the can is a weird game of like hide and go seek base tag.
It's hide and go seek. It's hide and seek, but the seeker has a base they need to protect while also seeking.
Otherwise, if the can, their base, gets kicked, they are still it.
And people get to hide again, repeat. Yeah. What this means is as a hider, as long as there's at least 3 or more hiders, you're aces. You just need one hider to hide really far away and then make obvious noises that they're there.
Yes.
To draw the attention of the seeker so one of the people that hid closer can go kick the can.
Yes. Like, the only way to prevent that is if you have very hyper-specific rules like, hey, if I actively visually see you and can point you out, then that counts as no longer being hidden, which a lot of children's games of hide and go seek, you have to be like right up next to them, otherwise kids don't accept it, in my experience.
Well, also, when I say you act as a distraction, you don't have to like be out in the open. You could just shake a bush.
Yeah, I know, but what I'm saying is like, as a child, being actively aware someone's there and then just refusing to come out is generally how they retreat. I'm still hidden.
Yeah, you have to be able to see them, obviously.
Yeah, but even if you can see them and they are still partially hidden, they don't accept it, then you get a tiny argument. And during that time period, obviously someone kicks the can.
Speaking of, Mr. Bloom starts searching. He finds one person and calls them out. And as he does, another of the men, I think actually a character named Mr. Agee.
Mr. Agee, yeah.
Mr. Agee, runs out.
The one who was really good at Jeopardy.
And by runs out, I mean runs in an old person run.
Yeah.
And manages to kick the can.
Yeah.
And then when he does,
he becomes young.
All of them except Mr. Bloom become young.
Mm-hmm. And they're like, wait, what the fuck? And then they have an existential crisis about the fact that they're young again.
And they have to...
Yeah. Well, at first they're super happy.
And they just run around and play a little bit. And then they all gather around Mr. Bloom who's sitting down. They're like, wait, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
I don't want to go to school again.
One of them was like, I don't want to grow up without my husband. He's not around. Oh, shit, my wedding ring. Where'd my wedding ring go?
Yeah. And Mr. Bloom finds her wedding ring and picks it up. And she's like, I never asked to be young again. I just...
wanted to dance.
Yeah. And she's like, I can dance while I'm old. Like, I don't have to be... He puts the ring back on her finger and he's like, well, you don't have to worry about it. Because if you go to sleep,
if you still have some of that magic left in you, you should be able to go to sleep and wake up with a young mind.
But if you want to stay young, you just don't go to sleep tonight, essentially.
Yeah, so they all head back upstairs, and when they do, Mr. Conroy wakes up and he sees a bunch of children. He's like, wait, what the fuck? They actually turned back into kids. Oh my god, I'm gonna go get the caretaker. Shit's going wild in here.
And so he goes and gets the caretaker, but when he comes back, all of the old people are now old people again.
And the characters are like, okay, Mr. Conroy, you're gonna be okay. Treating him like, oh, he's clearly senile. Something has gone off.
Except then Mr. Aggie reveals himself, and Mr. Aggie has decided to stay a child, and he's got a weird British accent now. And
he always had a bit of a British accent, though arguably that's because the actor is Australian.
It's now much more noticeable.
It's now much more Dickensian Charles Dickensian orphan British.
And he's wearing a cape.
He's been wearing it the entire time, yes. And also, a thing that I noticed from the beginning, his hair was like, assumably supposed to be like platinum blonde, but it just reads silver. They put a silver wig on this child who's been running around with this old man's cane, treating it like a fencing sword, and constantly hearing parry, repose, thrust.
And now he stands on the windowsill with his cane sword and goes, I am going to go. It has been nice knowing all of you, but I am going to stay young forever.
And then he bells out the window, and Mr. Conroy walks over the window. He's like, wait, take me with you.
Mr. Conroy learns by the end of this episode that, like, being young is a state of mind rather than, by the end of this segment, that being young is a state of mind, not like,
so,
he can still be young in his brain and have fun while being old.
At the end of the episode, we see them all doing their things. One of the older gentlemen has a delivery coming in of a bunch of fertilizer and seeds and plants. He's going to start a garden.
And Conroy is kicking a can around the yard. He's playing kick the can by himself.
Yep. The old ladies are headed out to go to a lake because they'd always talked about doing it, but they hadn't done it yet. So they're taking a picnic out to the lake. And that's
then
basically the end of the episode.
Yeah, Mr. Bloom leaves Sunnyvale, walks around the corner to the retirement house that's literally around the corner.
Yes.
And they're waiting for him to check in.
And they're all of the elderly residents are just practicing their 1,000-yard stare in the lawn.
That's pretty much the end of the episode.
Yeah.
With the idea that he just goes around turning old people into children.
Yeah. Because at a point when Mr. Conroy was talking to Mr. Bloom, trying to belittle him for wanting to remain young in heart and mind, was just like, oh, I bet this is your first retirement home. He's like, no, I've been to like 6 or 8. And then he goes to another one. Though there was a nice moment when he was leaving where Scatman Crothers is just being the jazz singer he is, taking a stick, knocking on the picket fence outside the first retirement home, singing a bit of a song.
Yeah. In addition, in that retirement home, when they're all kids and crowded around old man Mr. Bloom, they're like, why didn't you turn back into a kid? And he's like, well, I've turned back into a kid. And I realized I'd rather be me with the mind of a young me than actually be a physically young me.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what sends them down the existential rabbit hole where they're like, oh shit, I have to go to school again. I don't have parents. What am I going to do? I don't have a house.
I'm going to have to watch my kids die. I don't have a house. Oh shit, my husband's dead. I have to find a new love life or just continue to miss my husband for the next 70 years because I'm like maybe 8 at best, and I was 78.
Yep, that's the end of the episode. Justice. Sorry, that's the end of the segment.
Yep.
Justice. Would you watch more of the Twilight Zone movie? Zone the movie?
After this one, if I completely disregard the existence of the first one, yeah, sure, maybe. It's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. Honestly, would have expected a stronger out of the gate from Spielberg. Like, some of the lighting feels a bit weird. It doesn't have any, super great framing shots.
It's such a, mid-episode of Twilight Zone.
And honestly, you think they would play into the fact a bit more that they have fucking Scatman Crothers as their main character and have more music, which the music through this has still been fine. The music throughout this entire movie will continue to be fine. It's nowhere near as great as early Twilight Zone, in my opinion, but it's a good score. They just missed the opportunity to this upbeat, happy man include some jazz. It's Scatman Crothers. I see Scatman Crothers, and I want some good jazz. Why not?
Well, you see, they only got 25 minutes per segment. It's just an episode of television. They
could have just put the music in when they were running around doing stuff.
Yeah,
because they had lighthearted music there. Give me some jazz for it.
Yeah, well,
that's just a personal gripe. You though, would you watch more?
Still no. That was an inoffensively mid-tier episode of Twilight Zone. That was nearly as bad as Twilight Zone gets as far as episodes go, because Twilight Zone is typically very, quality.
Normally, the worst that happens is it's just okay.
When you get an episode that's forgettable and, that feels mid, that's a bad episode of Twilight Zone. And that's what this was.
Yeah.
So no, I wouldn't watch anymore. I would have stopped the movie after like the first 5 minutes of the first segment. But
now we're going to go on to segment 3, which is directed by Joe Dante, who at the time was not well known. I don't think people really know him too well anymore. Though he did make Gremlins.
It's also definitively the best of the 3. The best of the 4 IMO.
Fair.
It's definitely the best of these first 3.
I would agree. I can understand why someone might like the 4th segment more, though. I do particularly enjoy this one, especially with all of its framing, its setting, and everything. I think it's a stronger directorial move. I do think the 4th segment probably like a stronger story, but that's just because of the segment of the episode he chose to redo for that.
So this 3rd segment is a remake of the episode It's a Good Life.
Charlie Brown?
And it centers around a teacher named Helen Foley.
Yes.
As she is driving from one town to the other to start a new life, essentially, get a new job, start a new teaching thing.
And she stops at a diner to grab some food.
And directions, because she's kind of lost.
Yeah, to which the guy running is like, oh, you just accidentally blew past an exit.
You're not lost. You just need to get back on that highway up here.
Yeah, you can just continue on down the road a bit. You should see it. Just merge on there, head off.
And
he's hitting on her this entire time.
Yeah, and while she's in here, getting something to eat and getting directions, there's this young boy playing an arcade cabinet.
And occasionally he's sitting on the side of it because the game seems to be messing up.
But
we know it's messing up because he actively complains to the owner, and the owner's like, I don't make the game, I just take the quarters.
But every time he hits the cabinet, it's making the TV fritz out in the bar.
A TV playing a boxing match that 2 men
the diner.
Yeah, playing a boxing match that 2 men are actively watching, and one of them is getting visibly irate, and then talks about it when he starts complaining about the kid, and the owner's like, hey, man, leave it. And he's like, I got $20 on this. Because the guy's like, hey, leave the kid. He's giving me a quarter. Television screen. The guy's like, well, I got $20 on it. She's like, that sucks for you.
It's wild that I don't have $20 on this. Still doesn't seem like a me problem.
Yeah. And then the owner gets called back into the kitchen by one of his staff members because his wife is on the line.
Yeah, his wife calls.
To which he then gets a disparaging look for the teacher who's like, yeah, I'm aware you've been hitting on me. You have a fucking wife? Come on, man. Do better.
And then the guy who was upset takes his opportunity while the
owner is away to shove the child playing the arcade game away from the cabinet and being like, just stop.
Shove him to the ground.
Mm-hmm. Up against the table, to the ground, and it's so easy his head could have hit the table or the booth right behind him.
It's a grown man shoving a child to the ground.
Yep.
Helen gets up and she's like, hey.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
And then I have a name here in my notes. Nope.
Greasy Spoon Diner owner, man. Walks back and is like, what's going on? She's like, he just shoved him. And he's like, that's not okay. Tells Helen, hey, no charge for your meal or anything. And she's like, okay, sure. And then as she leaves, makes the comment of nice town because they were talking about the town. She comes from the town she's going to. And it was just general platitudes. So it was like, oh, it's a pretty nice place. So then she turns it around. It's like, real nice town.
So she gets back in her car and she goes to leave. And as she's backing up, she can't really see because she has everything shown in this car.
And there's another car right next to her.
And then she hits the kid on his bike.
Great fucking day for this kid.
Kid's having a great day. Turns out, though, this kid has a great day every day.
Yeah. So she gets out, make sure he's okay. He's fine. Bike's just kind of fucked up. She offers to give him money to fix it. And he's like, okay, could you give me a ride home?
And so she offers to give him a ride home. And while they're driving to his home, which is very far out of town.
So far away.
This is where we get introductions. Her name's Helen. His name's Anthony. This is where we get introductions. Her name's Helen. His name's Anthony. Today's his birthday. He's really glad he made a friend. Mm-hmm. So is she.
And she wonders about how his parents feel about him being so far away. And it's like, oh, they don't care. They don't like me at all. She's like, oh, well, that's not a great birthday. He's like, it's fine. I made a friend. So then they show up at his house, which is ridiculously nice just by being in the middle of nowhere. And there are like 4 or 5 kind of rundown cars outside.
And then when they get there, Anthony introduces her immediately to his uncle, Walt, and his sister Ethel.
Yeah, after inviting her in.
And they're watching cartoons in the living room.
Which, when we come in, the room is darker, gray. They both look fucking dead to the world, attention-wise. But the show that it's playing, first we see his house. Mm-hmm. Live action, really his house. And then it turns into the cartoon on the screen. And when they walk in, they're introduced. And they go from being, slumped, dead to the world to, super aware and attentive to Anthony and everything he is saying.
Yeah, they're excessively, friendly and welcoming to Helen and, they're excessively friendly and welcoming to Helen. Mm-hmm. And as she is meeting Walt and Ethel, I think this is where she also meets his parents.
Yeah, because Walt yells something about Anthony being home, and they come in and like, oh, who's this? They introduce, they're extremely overbearing, stand way too close. Mm-hmm. Then Anthony asks if she can stay for supper, and Helen's like, oh, I don't. And the elder's like, no, you definitely should, absolutely, yeah. And it's like, okay, I'll go show her where the bathroom is so she can wash up. And the family takes her sweater off of her and her purse to hold on to it for her, and Anthony leads Helen upstairs, and we immediately see the family immediately start tearing into her belongings. belongings, like just digging through them.
Yeah. And so Helen is upstairs with Anthony. They walk past a room where it has a bunch of like beds. And they're in order from largest to smallest, like
and they are
like Goldilocks and the Little Bears is how these beds are set up.
Even like picturesquely, like this is a child's book illustration come to life, like layout for the bed. And the hall they're walking through is gray with like some weird geometric shape to it. And we get this nice shot as the camera kind of pulls up that makes us aware of like how tall this hallway is in contrast to like how narrow it is kind of. And we see some paintings on the wall, one of which is a stereotypical nuclear family of 2 parents, a daughter, and a son. But none of them have faces. It's just literally left blank, an oval blankness. And they walk past another room where there's another young woman sitting watching cartoons.
So this is the room with all the like beds.
Yeah.
And this woman's sitting there watching cartoons and Helen calls out to her and she doesn't reply.
Because Anthony's off washing his own hands at this point.
And then Anthony comes and he's like, oh, that's my other sister, Sarah. She was in an accident, so she doesn't really talk anymore.
Yeah. And I was like, okay.
And like, she's not just sitting in a chair, it's a wheelchair that she's sitting in. And so Anthony explains that to Helen. Helen like goes, okay. And they continue walking. But then we cut to Sarah and we see that she doesn't have a mouth.
Yeah. It's just smooth. And her eyes look worn out and tired. There's heavy bags underneath. Her hair's stringy and untaken care of. And then we're back with Anthony and Helen, and Anthony yells down the stairs.
Well, no, before this, we cut to...
Oh, yeah. All the family downstairs on the steps.
And they're all, like, fighting over the contents of Helen's purse. Specifically, they're fighting over cigarettes and just, in general, like, searching through her stuff.
Yes.
Then Anthony yells that they're coming back down.
So we see them hurriedly putting on a cigarette, rearranging everything, and, like, straightening themselves up, going from this extremely frenetic, anxious energy to, like, nervously put together. So when Anthony and Helen get down the stairs, Anthony, like, walks through a bit of smoke and narrows his eyes and just, like, glares at him. And before he can really do or say anything, they all are like, oh, cool, let's go in the living room. We'll get supper ready in just a moment. And they head into the living room, and the camera pulls up again, and the living room is definitely taller than it was before when we first saw it.
Yeah.
And it's like these set lights come on because everything's much more vibrant. We have more lighting.
Well, yeah, and then once they're in the living room, Anthony, like, says, hey, dinner's ready.
Yeah, and his mom's like, okay, well... Where is it? Well, she leans in close to him after a moment after they set up chairs for Helen and Anthony to watch television while they go to get the food. She's like, where is it? And it's like, you know where it is. And she looks extremely nervous now. She's like, do I? Well, where could it be? And he's like, this is in the oven. And she immediately starts on the verge of a breakdown, tittering, laughing like, oh, silly of me, of course, yeah. So then her and Anthony's dad go to get it. And when they come back in, it is like a hamburger with peanut butter on it, a candied apple, some pudding. Sorry, some ice cream in an ice cream cup, and chips. And they just rearrange the living room.
It is ice cream, candy apples, potato chips, and hamburger topped with peanut butter.
Yeah. Yep. They rearrange the living room a bit so they can all sit there. And they have Helen sit right next to Anthony despite her definitely not looking comfortable at this point.
Yeah. And like once she starts looking at the food, she's like, so is this how
you always eat? This can't be good for you. And he's like, yeah, this is normal. It's really good once you try it. And she's like, yeah, but you need nutrients and stuff. And they're all like... He stares at her a bit, and the entire family looks nervous. He's like, oh, okay. And they're like, yeah, absolutely. And he turns to his mother and is like, you would never tell me that.
Yeah. And like Helen also has an issue with the hamburger because it has peanut butter on it, which she's wrong. Hamburgers with peanut butter are delicious.
Yeah, though it definitely looks bad. It looks like a shitty hamburger with like way too much peanut butter on it.
You can't have too much peanut butter.
And then Helen has the realization of, oh, of course, it's because it's your birthday, isn't it?
And that's when cousin Ethel,
his sister
Ethel, is like, another birthday, really, with presents and everything. And then her plate just like flies off her lap and breaks.
And he's like, it wasn't me. Though all of his family look and stare at him, and Helen looks confused.
And it's at this point that Helen first attempts to leave.
Yeah,
she's like, well, thanks for dinner. I gotta go. And Anthony's like, no, you have to stay. You have to stay. Uncle Walt's gonna perform his trick. And Walt's like, yeah, of course, I'm gonna perform a trick. I don't know what trick you're talking about.
And he's like, of course you do. The hat's on top of the TV.
Should also be mentioned, earlier in the episode, Anthony mentioned that he liked cartoons because Helen asked him what else he liked to watch. He's like, nothing really, just cartoons, because anything can happen in cartoons.
Yeah.
And the hat trick that he's suggesting his uncle do is something he literally was just happening on the cartoon.
Yes. So when they all turn around, there's suddenly a hat on top of the television. Helen looks extremely weirded out. But Uncle Walt walks over and he grabs it like, of course, so I'm going to do my trick.
And then spotlights come on Uncle Walt, which also further confuses Helen.
She literally looks behind her to see the spotlights. There's not, obviously. And Walt's like, so of course, yeah, my trick. I'm just going to... And he eventually reaches in the hat and pulls out a rabbit. And he's like, yeah, see?
And the entire time, Anthony's like, being like, do it, Uncle. do it.
And Walt just looked extremely scared.
And in between telling his uncle to do it, he's like, oh, Helen, you're going to like this. You're going to love this. Watch. It's going to be so good. And then when he pulls a rabbit out of the hat, he's relieved. He's like, oh, God, thank God it's just a rabbit. Helen's like vastly unimpressed.
Yeah, and she's like, okay. She gets up almost have to go, and he's like, he's not done. And Walt looks terrified now. Mm-hmm. And then a giant monster rabbit pops out of the hat.
Yeah.
And obviously everyone's fucking terrified.
And Helen then attempts to like literally just run out of the house, but she spills her purse. And while she's trying to gather her purse up, Anthony finds a note in her purse that is like torn off of like a comic or something. Mm-hmm. And it says, help us. Anthony is a monster.
Yeah.
And Anthony's like, who would write this?
And they'll all be like, no, it wasn't us. It definitely wasn't us. And then they all just kind of toss Ethel to the wolves.
Yeah.
So Ethel just like, fine, fuck it, and explains the entire situation, which is, hey, none of us are Anthony's family. He tricked us all to come in here like you, and then he controls everything, makes us exist like this weird cartoon, and if you say anything against it or try to leave, you become like his actual sister.
Upstairs, who he crippled and took away her mouth so she couldn't yell at him anymore.
And you're like, and if it's really bad, he'll do what he did to his parents, and then Anthony's like, done, and a weird monster shows up.
Well, she literally says that he killed his parents. Like,
she doesn't straight up say he killed his parents.
Does.
Did he?
Yes, she does.
Okay. So then a weird monster shows up as Anthony's like, I can do anything. I can create anything. And Helen's getting more and more unnerved, and then she commands Anthony to make it disappear eventually.
No, the monster doesn't appear yet. Because before that, Anthony's like, okay, well, you remember how I said I liked cartoons? It's because they can do anything. And then Ethel is just like thrown into the television, like not like physically, but she's now exists inside the cartoon in the TV.
Where she's chased by some cartoon monsters and eventually consumed by a weird cartoon dragon monster.
Mm-hmm. And then Helen, once again, attempts to flee.
And she opens the front door and there's just a giant eye watching her. It wasn't really Anthony's eye.
Yeah, and then Anthony begins to like rant and vent, and he's like, I don't know how you guys couldn't like me or want to be here. I do everything for you. I make all your wishes come true.
You don't have to do anything. You gotta watch TV all day.
Yeah, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to go to work. You just have to stay here and watch TV and be with me. Like, why is that so bad?
Yeah.
And that's when he summons that monster we were talking about.
Yeah. And Helen eventually gets him to send it away and then send everything away.
Yeah, she's like, you have to wish it away. And like, she eventually convinces him to like, she doesn't actually convince him. He goes like on a full mental breakdown.
Yeah.
Where he's like, fine then, if I have to send the monster away, I'll send everything away. And he sends the house away, his family away.
Which when asked about, he's like, I sent them to where they wanted to go. And no clarification after that.
She's like, where did they want to go? And he's like, away from me.
Yeah.
And they're just in a pure white void, which...
foggy, grayish void.
Yeah.
And they're double...
There's a double exposure to them and an echo on their voice.
Yeah. It's probably the worst part of this segment. It's not bad. It's just, I personally don't like the direction of it.
Yeah. Helen, during this, convinces Anthony that she'll teach him to be better at controlling his powers, and she'll be his teacher and his student. He can teach her while she teaches him, and that she will never abandon him.
Yeah. So Anthony reappears on the mountainside the house, minus the house. And they're standing there, and then he makes a car appear, and she's like, don't do that.
Please stop.
We literally just talked about this. So they get in their car, and they're getting ready to go, but she can't find her keys.
They were in her purse. The purse is in the house is gone.
And then Anthony just looks at her and says, check your pocket.
And she's like, you have to stop this. We literally just...
Whatever. So then she puts in the keys, and they drive away.
And as they drive away, the barren landscape that surrounds where this house was starts to bloom into flowers.
Yeah.
That's the end of the episode.
So after segment 3, would you watch more?
Based off the first two, I think the answer is still no. This one is better. I don't like the ending of this episode. It feels rushed and
Though, like I said, the camera angles are really good. The shooting for it, the way they change the lighting.
Also
the puppetry, the puppetry for the monsters and stuff, also good.
Also, Helen's gonna regret her decision eventually.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Massively, because Anthony is effectively the same as owning a wild animal.
Yeah.
Eventually it's gonna bite you. Mm-hmm. The problem is he's an omnipotent wild animal.
Yeah.
So when he bites you, it could be a no more mutant scenario.
Yeah. On to the last segment, the one you thought this entire movie was?
If we have to.
This one is directed by Max Miller?
George Miller.
I was close. Max Miller makes great cooking things. It's not my fault. George Miller directed one of the Mad Max movies, one of the original Mad Max movies. My brain just combined what he did and his name.
And this is obviously the remake of Nightmare at 20,000 Feet.
Yes. And the star of this is John Lithgow, who, fantastic actor.
Yeah. So this opens with John Valentine, played by John Lithgow,
having an extreme panic attack in a bathroom.
Yeah.
An airplane bathroom.
he has a fear of flying, and it's not going to go well for him.
Yeah, so we see some flight attendants knocking on the door trying to get him out. And he eventually comes out and taking some form of anxiety medication, assumedly, wetting down his hair and his face. He steps out trying to compose himself, and they're like, are you okay? He's like, yeah, no, absolutely. It'll be great. I'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
They're not fucking buying it. So they escort him back to his seat because they are knocking on the door because he's been in there forever. And because the pilot's like, hey, we're going to a little bit of turbulence. There's a storm. We're going to try to avoid it, but we might catch a bit of it. Fasten your seatbelts, put out your cigarettes because it is the 80s and you can smoke on airplanes.
Yeah. And so they get him back to his seat. There's a bit of discussion about whether or not he wants to take these sleeping pills from one of the flight attendants.
They're
he
not
doesn't.
Supposed to, but we have them, and you should definitely take them and make our job easier.
But, like, they give him a glass of water and, like, a blanket, and they're like, just try to get some sleep.
And he's starting to calm down a bit, and then there's a flash of light, and he freaks for a moment, and a little girl pops up over the front seat and holds out a Polaroid. He's like, $4.
And he's like, what? And she's like, no, I'm just joking. And then the flight attendant's like,
you're going to go back to your seat, picks her up, and moves her across the aisle from him and buckles her in.
And so he is sitting here, and he's looking out the window, and there's a flash of lightning again.
Well, this is also where we learn he's a writer.
Oh, yeah, because he wrote a textbook.
Yeah, she's going to put his stuff away, and she finds a book about...
It's a mathematics textbook. He wrote a mathematics textbook.
It's about the brain.
Oh, yeah, you're right. My bad. It's a brain. It's a computer science textbook.
Correlating to, like, computer science and the brain.
We finally hit it.
Yeah.
It took us 3 tries, but we got there. He wrote a computer science textbook.
Yeah, but it's also talking about the brain. It's literally in the title. But she's like, I'll put this away for you. And she's like, oh, you like the science fiction stuff? He's like, it's not science fiction. It's a textbook. I wrote it. And she's like, looks down at it, sees the name. He's like, oh, so you did. Well, I'm going to put this away for you.
Yeah. So then he's looking out the window, flash of lightning.
He thinks he sees something, stares at it. Seems a bit scared. Doesn't see anything. Seems to relax a bit. Another flash of lightning. Doubles down on staring outside. Is more panicked. And then another flash of lightning. And he sees what he thinks is a man out there.
And he freaks out because he's seen a man out there. And once again, the flight attendants have to, like, calm him down. And, like, they talk him into taking the sleeping pills this time.
Well, he yells about there being a man outside on the wing. And everyone rushes to look out.
Yeah.
And then they're like, what? No. So they all go back. And the flight attendant who was trying to comfort him sits down. And he's being like, maybe a guy was trying to fix something on the engine. And he's there, like, I don't know how he didn't get blown off by the wind.
Yeah, and he eventually was like, actually,
how he survived.
None of that makes sense.
Thin air or the cold. It's like, I'm just imagining it, aren't I? She nods and offers him the sleeping pills again, to which he takes this time.
And, like, she gives him a blanket and he wraps up and he's like, see, I'm better. I'm getting better. And then he is getting better, noticeably. And the flight attendant steps away, and he's sitting there. There's another flash of lightning, and he sees one of the engines flame out because this gremlin goblin thing throws something inside the engine.
Yeah. And he freaks out for a moment, and then the girl from across from him suddenly has a puppet in her hands.
Yeah.
And the puppet's like, you used to be normal, but now you're just insane. And he's freaking out again. There's another flash of lightning, and he looks, and there's just this green, goblin-y gremlin face right in the window.
Yep.
And he screams. And then he's sitting bolt up, straight, sweating. He's just woken up from a nightmare, apparently.
That's what we're intended to believe.
So when he looks over, we do see the girl, and she does just randomly have a puppet now. Like, I'm not talking like a hand puppet. I mean, she has a full-on Night of the Living Dummies puppet.
Yes.
Or I guess Scarface from Batman, if that's a better example for the individual out there.
And it's at this time we actually notice, we probably noticed him earlier. There's a larger man sitting in front of where Valentine is sitting.
And whenever Valentine is freaked out, he's looked back at him, like,
getting, like, just
stared.
Daggers right at him. So Valentine, like, kind of starts to calm himself down. He draws, like, shades down on the window, and
then they hit some turbulence and things are being weird again, and he freaks out once more. And as he's trying to calm himself, he's reaching around, reaches into the pocket in the front and pulls out a newspaper, and then it says 337 dead in deadliest flight, and it's their plane. So he freaks the fuck out about how they're going to crash.
Oh, is it their plane?
I assume it's their plane. We don't linger on the shot very long.
Okay.
But who knows? Given the context that I have for the original episode, then the 2019 episode we watched, I assume it is still their plane in the movie.
Okay, fair enough.
So he starts freaking out. The airline attendants are, like, trying to calm him down. All the guests are freaking out. The captain walks back, and the attendant's explaining everything to him. So the captain comes over and is like, hey, calm the fuck down. You are a threat to the people on this plane.
Yeah.
It's my job to get them there safely. You're causing a massive panic.
And Valentine's like, but one of your engines just flamed out, right? Like, are we going to be safe with...
And the pilot looks a bit, like, weirded out by that statement, but also, like, more like a how does he know that sort of situation.
Yeah.
And as the captain goes to get back out after assuring him that it's fine, nothing went wrong, the large man from before kind of stops the captain. He's like, hey, if you need any help, I'm with the FAA security.
Yeah. He's essentially an air marshal. I don't think he's literally an air marshal,
he's
but...
like, I can handcuff him if you want until I get there. And he's like, no, it's fine. We got it handled. Until they don't, and he freaks out again. because it's basically the same thing, more lightning, more issues.
Well, they hit turbulence.
Yeah.
And an oxygen canister slides across the floor. And when they hit turbulence, he had his like window thing open, and he sees the gremlin out there again. And the oxygen canister comes sliding past, and he picks it up and he starts banging on the window with it. And when that happens,
they're like, no, you need to be handcuffed.
Yeah.
You can't be trusted.
And he gets in a kerfuffle with the essentially air marshal, where he manages to grab the air marshal's gun off of his ankle holster and shoot out the window.
Yeah. And airplane depressurizes in an entirely unrealistic fashion, because every movie ever doesn't understand how airplanes work. Airplanes don't. You're not going to get sucked out. But he gets partially sucked out, and we see him starting to frost up a bit, but he's still holding the gun, and he's shooting at the gremlin thing, which is approaching him and really angry. And then it I couldn't tell if
lightning flashes, and then it rides off on a bolt of lightning.
Well, it looked like it also destroyed part of the gun when it was right up close to him. I just don't know how. I couldn't, the angle
it bites,
in the dark. I thought it
bites the gun, because it eats metal. That's
I thought
I thought you meant the part where it vanishes.
Yes, I looked away for a brief moment, and I thought it ate it, because I was like, oh, this is literally just a gremlin attacking airplanes.
It's just a gremlin.
But I was like, I didn't see it. I was like, in my brain, I'm assuming it ate the gun, but
it took a bite of the gun. And then the lightning, it rides off on a bolt of lightning, and the plane does an emergency landing.
Well, it rides off on a bolt of lightning, and the storm starts to break, just enough for them to see the ground.
Yeah.
So the plane does an emergency landing. And we see John Lithgow being carted off in a straitjacket strapped to a stretcher.
There was a moment here after it bit the gun where it grabs him by the face and wags its finger in his face.
Yeah.
But then it rides off on a bolt of lightning, yeah.
And as he's being carted off, everyone's kind of talking. We're seeing different groups of people. And the pilot's like, man, it's really great that the storm broke. Otherwise, I don't think I could have landed this plane with the engine out like that.
Yeah. And aviation mechanics run out, and the pilot's like, I need you to get that engine checked. It flamed out in the middle of flight. I don't think I could have landed.
So then the guy in charge started taking it. He was like, hey, check this, make sure the fuel's everything.
And then before we get to the mechanics actually looking at it,
we have the flight. Well, we have some passengers talking, and then there's this old couple. This old lady who earlier was like, before we actually ever saw the monster, when he first talked about it, she's like, oh, it was green and slimy and nasty looking. And her husband had been like, hey, don't. And she's like, no, you have to
indulge
these people.
But
she was entirely right, by the way.
And Valentine's being loaded onto an ambulance and raving about what happened.
And the flight attendants are talking. And the one who was originally, when he first had a panic attack, called him crazy. Was like, I guess he really was crazy. And the woman's like, no, something happened.
And then the air marshal's just like, it's claustrophobia. They would rather throw themselves out of a plane than be stuck inside.
I've seen it happen multiple times. I've seen it, I tell you. And he's trying to go off about it because, hey, he doesn't do much, probably. So this was his big important moment. And as we're moving away from him, we hear the old lady, and she's like, but the gun, though, that was really scary. He's like, oh, no, he didn't have a gun. That was my gun. Actively pointing out that, no, the guy didn't have a gun. He just took mine.
Yeah.
And we move over to the mechanic team, and we start with the ones on the ground. Then we hear a guy up on top by the engine yelling, hey, check this out. This is really weird. This is messed up. And we move over to him, and there are just giant claw marks around the engine. It's been torn open.
Yeah,
it looks like bites have been taken out.
The engine has been torn apart, bitten apart. There's scratches and claw marks that nothing could explain.
Yeah. And then the head mechanic goes, what the hell happened up there?
And he kind of looks at the ambulance as it drives away, and he's like, maybe that guy wasn't lying.
Or he was at least onto something.
Yeah.
And then we're in the back, and Lithgow's still kind of ranting. And
our ambulance driver is Dan Aykroyd, who we should have mentioned earlier was the passenger that transformed into a monster in the prologue.
Yes.
So you should see this coming here, because
as they're driving, he turns off the siren. He's like, I think that's enough of that. And Lithgow sighs for a moment, relieved. And then the guy turns on Midnight Special.
He's like, you want to listen to some music? And Lithgow's like, yeah, sure.
And it starts playing. He's like,
Credence, I love these guys.
Yeah. And as they're driving away, we move out of the ambulance, but we hear the line.
Well, no, he goes, heard you had a really big scare up there.
And Lithgow was like, yeah, it was crazy. He's like, do you want to see something really scary?
And then the camera pans up. He doesn't pull over and eat John Valentine, but it's implied that that's what's going to happen. Yeah. And that's the end of the movie. We got there.
So, Josh, what are your thoughts on Twilight Zone, the movie?
It is the worst piece of Twilight Zone media I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, you should watch more from the fucking second run of Twilight Zone. Then.
The 80s run?
Late 80s run, yeah. It has some pretty bad episodes, actually.
No, thank you.
Why not?
Because if this is what the late 80s run was, I don't care. This was terrible.
In the 80s, rather than watch the 80s run, just watch all of Night Gallery. Rod Serling's other anthology series, but more horror, less sci-fi.
Yeah, this was atrocious.
Or just watch The Outer Limits. Or watch The Outer Limits, Night Gallery, 2000s reboot of Twilight Zone. Just don't watch the 80s one. Except for the one Morgan Freeman episode where he plays the devil in a game of poker.
Early Black Mirror, pre-Bandersnatch Black Mirror.
To clarify, I don't mean Morgan Freeman is playing against the devil in poker. I mean he is playing as the devil who is playing a game of poker.
Anyways, Justin, what do you think of this episode? This segment, sorry.
I can understand why some people think this is the strongest. Lithgow does do a great job.
It's fine.
I do like the segment 3, the first good one better, because I like the directorial angle of that one a lot more. I think it was a lot more, honestly, artistic and well done. And given the fact that I have seen 2 episodes of Nightmare at 20,000 feet before, basically.
This is the worst adaptation of that story, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Though I do appreciate that it is still much more fast-paced than the 2019 version.
That's fair.
I think, honestly, if we had just gone without the gremlin aspect with it, it would have worked.
Yeah, well...
But I do understand we were keeping more to the original, which did have a gremlin, so...
Well, I think that's been Fright Flight for 2024. 5 years of Fright Flights. Happy Halloween to all of our passengers. Do you have anything else you want to add before we do the sign-off? Okay, well, if you want to contact us,
you can do so in a variety of ways, one of which is by emailing us at copilotsreview@gmail.com.
Or you can tweet us, or whatever it's called on Blue Sky, at copilotsreview.
Or you can find a link to those, our email, our YouTube, our Discord, our Patreon, and other things, I think, by going to our website, copilotsreview.simplecast.com.
Which also happens to have all of the episodes that we've ever had, which are also pretty much available on any streaming platform where you listen to podcasts.
Except for Amazon, because fuck them. Their terms and conditions are bad.
Thanks for flying with us, and we hope you have a happy Halloween.
See you again real soon.